Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and with just 3 episodes left of Lovecraft Country, we're finally starting to see how the show is shaping up. Throughout this video, we're going to be breaking down the latest episode, and also going over our theories, the Easter eggs, and things you missed. There will be heavy spoilers here, so if you haven't had a chance to check out the episode yet, then I highly recommend that you check out now. I'm actually on holiday right now, making this video from a hotel room, so I'd massively appreciate it if you drop a thumbs up on the video. Thank you as always for clicking this. Now let's get into the breakdown. Okay, so the title of the episode is Jigabobo. Now the word is the combination of two, and the first part comes from the word jigaboo, which is a derogatory term for a black person. The word originates from Bantu and it means servant. Typically it was used as a way to describe slaves, and sadly it's been dropped a lot in society to oppress people. I was a bit unsure on whether to discuss the full meaning behind it, but I feel that it's important to not brush over these kinds of things, and we should discuss how the words have been used in the past, even if I don't condone its application ever. Now the second part of the word Bobo means a child born on a Tuesday in Ghanaian, however it has been used generally to mean children. You might remember that it was used last week as the nickname of Emmett Till, whose funeral we open on at Robert's Temple. Till is very much laced throughout the episode, and his tie is even used on the title card in the introduction. In real life, Till was brutally murdered by white racists, and they beat him until he looked unrecognizable. Emmett's mother insisted on an open casket to expose what had happened to her son, and he has become a symbol of the civil rights movement. Sadly, an all-white jury found his killers not guilty, even though they admitted to it later. Under the double jeopardy rules, they were not prosecuted, and Till has become an iconic figure of inequality. We see members of both the Christian Church and Nation of Islam speaking up, showing how this horrific crime affected people of all faith. Cutting through the scenes are policemen, and the force very much becomes the overarching villains of the piece. In the background we can hear Cruel Summer by Bananarama, and we see as a woman vomits due to the sight of Emmett's body. To make matters worse, it's one of the hottest days of the year, and the smell of Emmett's corpse wafts down the crowd, which is where we join Ruby and Dee. Due to Leti's pregnancy, she's finding it difficult to stand, and we also see how the revelation about Montrose last week still has the pair on less than speaking terms. Predominantly throughout this episode we follow Dee, Hippolyta and George's child, as she comes face to face with just how ugly the world is. Even though Hippolyta stated last week that she wished to return to Dee to be her mother, the showrunners confirmed that after the episode, H did not return from her journey, and thus Dee is left on her own without either of her parents. I do think that H will actually return at some point, but it may not be for quite a while yet. Now when Dee disappears, Tick doesn't seem to be bothered, and I have a feeling that he saw something through the portal last week that may have given him some inkling to future events. We'll discuss this later in the video, but this episode itself is actually a reframing of a chapter from the book in which we follow a character named Horus who is chased by something known as the Devil Doll. Horus is actually the son of George and Hippolyta in the source material, and similar to this episode, Captain Lancaster places a curse on him. Horus is actually name dropped in this entry along with some other characters such as Caleb and George surviving the events of the lodge. Now the Jigabobos are incredibly scary, and I feel like we might actually get introduced to them early on, with us witnessing 2 girls eating ice cream and laughing. I didn't actually learn this until you guys told me in the Ruby episode, but under the Jim Crow laws at the time, black people weren't allowed to have vanilla ice cream. Seeing the pair having it does hint that something else might be going on, and the sight of them causes Dee to lose it a bit and she ends up throwing rocks at them. Captain Lancaster then arrives and interrogates her down a back alley, asking questions about Hippolyta. The comic cover that we ended on last week must have been found along with the bodies of his men, and he wants to know what's going on. He places a curse on Dee, and we also get a quick flash of a cream of wheat advertisement. Throughout the series we've seen how black people are portrayed in advertising to be either Aunt Jemima type characters or what's referred to as Uncle Toms. Just recently Uncle Ben's actually removed this kind of advertising from their products as it reinforces certain stereotypes, many of which align with the demons in this episode. Also yeah, don't spit on a kid's head. What the hell is wrong with you? Now we cut to Leti on her search for Diana, and she comes face to face with Jar, who's travelled over from Korea for Atticus. Speaking of Atticus, he meets with Christina, who's in a crypt. I was kind of hoping we'd get a nod to Caleb Braithwaite here, but we do get one with the book, I suppose, so All's well that ends well. Now Atticus wants to learn magic, and after his journey last week, it's clear he's found something that's changed his perspective on things. In exchange for the key that was found inside the Ori, Christina explains how to protect oneself when casting spells. She says spells take energy, intention, and a body, the latter of which was of course Atticus when Samuel tried to sacrifice him. Just as she's leaving, Christina is stopped dead in her path by the mention of the equinox, which you may remember was also name dropped in the second episode as being needed for the immortality ceremony. Christina says that she's going to be the first to achieve this, and as we know, this failed in the case of both Titus and Samuel. Dee goes to Montrose looking for answers, and he mentions that his best friend was taken too when he was younger, which is likely a nod to the Tulsa massacre. Dee tries to wash off the curse, but after failing to do so, puts on a Chicago American Giants cap. These were actually a fully African American baseball team that were based in Chicago, which is where this episode takes place. There's also the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, which was an anti-slavery novel that is said to have helped lay the groundwork for the Civil War. In the 19th century, it was the second best-selling book next to the Bible, and it fueled the abolitionist cause in the 1850s. The character on the cover actually comes to life in this entry, and it's very important to pay attention to it here. Ruby arrives at Williams, and after a confrontation with a racist that William has to defuse, the two get it on. We hear I Put a Spell on You by Alice Smith, which is of course a nod to the magic between the pair. Ruby takes the potion to transform herself, and we get the feeling that both she and William are in love, but they have to live a lie and hide away their true selves in order to be together. This is of course echoed in Montrose, and we get the feeling that the truth shouldn't be hid away as Dell's skin sheds during their intercourse. Ruby later goes to Christina, furious over Emmett's death, and in general, the way that white society treats black people. Christina doesn't seem to care, and we very much get the idea that Ruby doesn't either deep down, because she's working purely on her base desires and addictions. In the book, she becomes very much attached to the potion and craves it almost like a narcotic. This is likely because she's just fed up and sees it as a means of escape rather than a solution. Across town, Tick arrives home to find Leti and Gia's shoes outside of his house. In Korea, one is expected to remove their shoes upon entering someone's home, as Koreans tend to eat and sleep on the floor, and thus not removing them is seen as very disrespectful. He finds Gia and Leti sitting in a very uncomfortable silence, and he should have just turned around and walked out right there. Now Gia discusses the Kumio curse that was placed on her, and we learn that there was also 100 men's lives taken in order to lift it. The last time we left her, she was on 99. I do get the feeling that the final one was actually her mother. She doesn't really have any answers, and I don't know why she did this big trip to have this tiny conversation, but hey, good to see her back, and I'm sure she'll pop up again before the finale. Tick and Leti have a big fight, and he says he held back the information from her because he wanted to protect people. We saw how Montrose attempted to do the same thing, and that he, like his son, has even lied and killed to cover things up. Leti says that in doing this, everyone has died, including her at one point, and we realise how dangerous it is to keep secrets. See, whenever your ex comes into things, it always gets complicated. Now Tick says he's going to cast a spell that will protect them, and the pair depart on bad terms. Dee makes her way across town, avoiding the police, but something much worse comes with the cover of the book coming to life in the form of two girl demons. This is actually known as the watermelon stereotype, and we hear the song Stop Dat Knockin' by A.F. Winnemore play in the background as they stalk her on the train tracks. These chicabobos follow her throughout the entry, and we even see at one point another reference to a horror classic when we can see three girls playing jump rope in the street. This is a nod to Nightmare on Elm Street, and the song they sing sounds very much like 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. That's why I don't do voices in the breakdown. Now, Dee bumps into Leti and tries to tell her about the curse, but she's unable due to it holding restrictions over her voice. I think this might actually be a metaphor for how the police can often silence black people into speaking out against them, but let me know your thoughts on if you interpreted it another way. Dee finds Woody, aka her mother's car, which we can guess that Tick used to return home with last week. Maybe H is just walking home right now, but let me know your theories on exactly where she is. Now Montrose and Tick have a father and son chat, in which the truth about his sexuality comes out into the open. You also see a sign that says closed for Emmett, further showcasing how the young child's death rocks society. Montrose tells a story about how he knew a man that was gay and police arrested him and sent him to an asylum where half of his brain was cut out. At the time, homosexuality was viewed as a psychological condition known as a disordered mind, and many gay people were persecuted and operated on by institutions. Montrose didn't want this for himself, and thus he hid it away from society. Both he and Dora wanted a family, and he still views this as a form of love. Tick says he went through the portal to the future and reveals that his son George wrote the Lovecraft Country book we saw last time. This was not part of the novel at all, and it's interesting to see this fourth wall breaking moment. Tick named him after George, and it's becoming more and more apparent that he was actually his real father. Across town, Leti is praying in a church to grant protection for Tick. Leti didn't actually believe in God, but after dying she's gained some more appreciation for religion and magic in general. Christina enters, and we learn that she was contacted by Leti, who wished to give her a photograph of the pages in exchange for protection over Atticus. Christina refuses and instead gives it to Leti, branding her with the same mark that we saw on William's chest. This is the mark of Cain, which was a spell passed on through the Braithwaites that can actually be used to heal someone. It's now night, and Dee is still on the run. She arrives at the police station to follow Captain Lancaster, and I still can't get over just how creepy those Jigabobos are. I love when a show or film creates a new kind of monster, and just the way they move and dance about in the darkness is so unnerving that it makes this one of the scariest episodes so far. Dee follows Lancaster, and Tick tells Montrose about the future in which he witnessed a riot. There's talk of a woman with a robotic arm, and this might actually be Dee, who we see later has something strange happen to hers. They read the blurb of the book, aka their family story, and mention many of the key changes in the show. They also discuss how Christina sacrifices Tick in order to become immortal during the equinox. Montrose swears to sacrifice himself if it comes down to it, and very much get the feeling that he might actually be the one that dies, though the book doesn't really have any of the major players going out. Again, this seems to be its own thing right now, and who knows what's going to happen. Cut to Lancaster reading a story about Leti, and they mention pioneering, which often refers to someone entering an unfounded land, and Lancaster clearly isn't happy about her. He wants the Ori from the house, but as we know, it's already been opened. Dee storms in and starts asking questions, and Lancaster promises to remove the curse if she brings the device to him, but she refuses to and instead calls him a pig. He says she's already dead, and we see as the Jigabobos start to close in. In the background we can hear Naomi Wadler's speech, in which she discusses the death of black girls that don't ever make the news. She states that black girls are often seen as statistics and numbers when we should value their lives. Black girls are actually murdered at a disproportionate rate, and it's a very powerful speech. The episode ramps up from this point onwards, with the monsters closing in, but Dee lets out a massive scream as she rides by them. Cut to Montrose and Tick setting up a protection circle, and we learn the former is dyslexic, which Atticus didn't know about. It kinda hints at how many secrets he's keeping from his son, and that he already may know that George is his true father. They start to enact a spell in the language of Adam, but this seemingly fails. We cut to Christina and discover that she's paid 2 men to enact Emmett Till's murder on her so that she can see firsthand what it was like. It's agonizing to watch, and it reminds us of just how brutal the actual crime was. Now, unlike Till, Christina doesn't die due to the mark of Cain, but she experiences it firsthand and comes out crying before this starts to turn into a weird laugh. Now, I don't know exactly what's going on here, but the truth about her does come out to Leti when we join Ruby confessing their relationship. She says she knows the truth about what's going on, and is also disappointed because Leti's child will of course be tied to this horrendous legacy. Ruby has a really powerful speech in which she says she wants to create her own space to live in so that she doesn't have to suffer the prejudices of others. Just as she's about to discuss how Christina will help her to do this, Lancaster and his forces arrive. They have a fake warrant on the basis that the Nation of Islam is at the location, and they state that they believe they're trying to plan retribution for Emmett Till. I think this might be similar to the Algiers motel incident, which the film Detroit was based on. Police arrived at the motel accusing people of rioting and unlawfully murdered several black people. The officers were found not guilty, and it again shows just how unjust society is. Luckily, because of the spell put on the property in episode 3, they're unable to enter, and you might remember that Christina was held back from doing this too. This stops people with magic from entering, but they begin to shoot at the home and everyone has to take cover. At this point, Dee finds a way to have a voice, and this involves writing down what is happening to her on a piece of paper. The Jigabobos swarm her, but she manages to beat them with a pipe before Montrose arrives. They do something weird to her arm, and as we mentioned earlier, this may tie into Atticus's journey to the future. Tick arrives to find the house being shot at, and the police turn their fire to him even though he was surrendering. However, the spell clearly worked, and a Shoggoth busts out the ground to protect him. Again, I know these aren't like Shoggoths in Lovecraft's work, but the show has changed their appearance much to fit its new narrative. Now, as we know, their favourite food is policemen, and the beast tears through the crowd whilst Tick runs to Leti. It's an incredible one-shot piece, and it also lets us know how Christina was able to control them in the first couple of episodes. Lancaster is ripped apart, but if you know the source material, then you know that he's going to be back, and worse than ever before. That ends the episode, and we cut to the promo for next week, but if you don't want anything ruined, then I recommend you turn off now. There's not much here that really appears in the book, but again, you might just want to go into the episode without any further information, so yeah, get the hell out of here. Now, it looks, you can tell this is 6 AM in the morning I'm doing this. Now, it looks like they're here to find out about the curse on Dee, and they go to Christina for help. They ask if she will remove Dee's arm, as it's slowly turning her into a Jigabobo, and it's likely that the two girls we've seen were normal people at one time. We see a city burning up, and it might even be possible that this is Tulsa, though we don't know for definite yet. The time machine is powered up once more, and it could be that they're travelling back to the past. Like I said, it differs so much from the source material that it's difficult to tell, but that closes up the episode, as well as our breakdown. Now obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts on the entry, so make sure you comment below and let me know. If you missed any of our other breakdowns so far, then make sure you check them out after this, as you're definitely going to have a great time, I think, hopefully. Now don't forget, we're also giving away 3 copies of the Marvel Phase 1 box set, and all you have to do to be in with a chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. The winner is going to be chosen at random on the 30th of October, so make sure you get involved. If you want to support the channel and get to see content early, then please consider clicking the join button below. You can also come chat to us on the Discord server, linked in the description, or at Heavy Spoilers on Twitter. Thanks for making it until the end of the video. You've been the best. I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Peace. I'm off to go get drunk now.